South Australian farmers are calling for an independent review into proposed rises of land and water levies. Some say their charges could increase by up to 150%, adding to cost of living pressures that are already on the rise.
Joe Keynes is a fifth-generation farmer in the Barossa Valley. He says it's been a dry 12 months, which has at times proved challenging.
We've actually not got as much feed as we'd perhaps like, so it has been a fairly tough year. So we're actually hand feeding a lot of animals.
He's concerned about increasing land and water bills. Under a current proposal, his annual land rates would rise by up to $3,000.
To be honest, we've got no indication as to what those water management planning and management charges are for.
The charges are because the state government is recovering $6 million every year from the state's 8 NRM boards to be spent on water management planning across all of South Australia. That means the boards will have to cut programs or increase rates. Most are doing both in varying forms.
To put it into perspective, land levies in the Adelaide and Mount Lofty ranges are expected to rise by about 6% or $1, while in the Murray-Darling Basin region, which takes in Joe's land, they're proposed to increase by about 150%.
Some are questioning how fair the distribution of costs are and whether the $6 million will be spent in regional areas. Primary Producers SA wants an independent review of all water planning and management costs.
We don't know whether some of it's wasted, some of it might be being spent on things that landholders don't want to have done. So without that info, we're really in the dark.
But the Environment Department says its doors are always open for anyone who wants to see where the money is being spent.
We'll certainly make that information available to the various stakeholders to a far greater extent than perhaps we have in the past.
But some, like Joe Keynes, still need convincing they're getting value for the rising costs. Nicola Gage, ABC News, Cainton.
Indigenous groups in the Flinders Ranges say they'll fight any plans to dump nuclear waste on their traditional lands. The popular tourist region is one of 6 sites proposed by the federal government to permanently store low-grade waste.
Wallabedina Station, 400 kilometres north of Adelaide, is partly owned by former South Australian Senator Grant Chapman, who nominated this land for a nuclear waste dump a year ago. And while a decision is yet to be made, the issue has deeply divided the community. Some are open to the opportunities it could bring, while others are fiercely against it.
For the Adnyamatna people of the Flinders Ranges, this land is filled with songlines and sacred sites.
In the storyline, this is where the young woman's buried. The water actually represents her body fluids and stuff, and it's, like I said, it's very significant to women.
Soon, one of those songlines could run close to a radioactive waste management facility. That's angered traditional owners, some who helped successfully fight off a nuclear dump proposed for Woomera in South Australia a decade ago. They say they've been working to protect sacred sites here and open up tourism opportunities.
We are not standing out here in 43-degree heat just to tell a story about something that happened millions of years ago. We are genuine when we say that we don't want the radioactive waste dump on our land.
The remote cattle station is one of 6 sites being considered to house low-level waste from around the nation, mostly medical materials currently stored in hospitals and universities. There's 1 site in Queensland, New South Wales and the Northern Territory, and 3 in South Australia. Government officials have been meeting with locals. The council says those in the nearby town of Hawker have mixed views.
There's a number of people there who see great opportunities to secure the future of their town. There, 15 to 20 jobs is a really big thing in a town like that.
But some question whether the opportunities are worth the risk.
To look at it's only a small area, but the amount of art heritage that's going to be damaged and the amount of heritage that's here is going to be massive.
If this site is chosen, the facility would take up about 100 hectares of this 25,000 hectare property. The federal government is expected to make a final decision at the end of the year.
Carp have become a huge problem on the River Murray. In a couple of years, the Commonwealth will begin one of the biggest ecological interventions in our history, using herpes to get rid of the problem fish. But researchers are worried about the side effects. Biological controls have been used in Australia before. Some have been successful. Prickly pear, for example, was almost completely wiped out by an introduced moth. But there have also been massive failures. The cane toad is infamous for the carnage it caused after it was brought in to stop the sugarcane beetle. Bitty Bush 2 aimed to stop sand dune erosion but destroyed native plants and habitats. Nicola Gage reports on the plans for Carpageddon.
It's a cool morning on Lake Alexandrina and Zane Skrypek has been fishing, mainly for the native golden perch. Unintentionally, he's also caught bucket loads of carp.
Yeah, so I've got probably about 100 kilos of carp there.
They're known as the rabbits of the river. Since being introduced, the bottom feeders now make up more than 80% of fish biomass in the Murray system and cost the economy an estimated $500 million each year from the damage they cause, which is why the federal government is proposing Carpageddon. In other words, killing them off.
If they can remove them, that would be fantastic. You know, that the native fish would bounce back. You know, it would be better for myself and the rest of the industry.
The plan is to release a strain of the herpes virus, Cyprinid herpivirus 3, in 2018. It's been proven to kill carp without affecting other species. Research is now underway to work out how the ecosystem would change without them.
Let's make sure we do the planning appropriately, let's make sure we resource it appropriately, and it will need to take the time it takes. But the benefits are significant, socially, environmentally and economically.
There's also the question of removing potentially millions of tonnes of rotting fish. How that will happen is still being investigated.
There's a lot of things we need to determine, but so far my research does indicate that there will be huge side effects for the rest of the ecosystem.
Small changes in oxygen levels can potentially have big ramifications for native wildlife. So University of Adelaide researchers have been putting dead carp into 800-litre tubs of water to try to measure the amount of oxygen the decomposing fish use up. Although the work is in its early stages, it's showing some dramatic results.
We found that at 20 degrees, one carp can almost completely remove oxygen from the water in less than 48 hours.
It is potentially a massive problem that people haven't thought through. And so we're suggesting that a virus is probably not the right way to go.
Fisherman Gary Harrising has questioned whether removing so many dead fish is realistic. He says the process can't be rushed and wants other removal options to also be explored.
The original proposal about using genetics over a longer time frame was a smart move.
This kind of project on such a large scale is unprecedented in Australia. A string of government approvals will be needed, as well as support from the public. And there's a possibility that communities along the river will be tasked to help with the clean-up.
If the risks that are borne out of the legislative approval process and the public consultation process can't be resolved, clearly this won't go ahead.
While there is a lot of work ahead, those involved believe ridding the system of carp is achievable, a goal everyone wants to see reached. Nicola Gage, ABC News, Malang.